Welcome to Behind the Screen, where plans fall apart, dice roll high, and only sometimes we know what we're doing. My name is Talon, I am your Dungeon Master today, and before we get into today's video, I do have some news to share with you all. So all of my life stuff is figured out. I have figured out exactly which days I'm going to be uploading, so I'm going to be uploading 3 times a week. I'll be uploading Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So keep an eye out for my channel on those days. I for sure will be posting a new video on those days. Now with that little news out of the way, let's go on to today's video. So imagine this, you have a D&D session in exactly 30 minutes and you have slacked the entirety of the 1 or 2 weeks in between sessions and you need a quick game plan of what you want your session to be about. Because believe me, I have definitely been there. And well, I have definitely learned some things of how to build a session just in 30 minutes, so today, that's exactly what we're going to be discussing. Be sure if you haven't already, be sure to go down there, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and also hit the like button so I know you enjoyed. And without further ado, let's get into how to build a D&D session in just 30 minutes. Alright, so starting off with step 1 that you should do is that before you touch maps or monsters or any fancy plot twists, be sure you just pick one clear goal that you have for today's session. Not 10 different things, not 5, just one clear goal that you want to happen in your session today. Because you're playing the session in like 30 minutes, right? You do not need an entire Lord of the Rings novel of just lore that you need for this session. Now ask yourself this question. If a players only remember one thing from this session, what will it be? That answer is your core objective. Everything else is just seasoning. Here are some easy examples of one big goal that you can have during your session. Explore a creepy temple and reach the final chamber. Rescue a kidnapped NPC from bandits. Have a big social session in town to gather clues. A boss fight with the cult leader. Or just traveling from point A to point B just to survive the road. That's it. That's the level of detail that we're talking about here. You don't need, oh, well, in the 9th arc of this session, this is good. No, just one thing that is going to happen this session. What's the goal? When you know this one big thing, planning becomes way easier. Then you suddenly know what kind of scenes you need, what kind of NPCs matter, what kind of danger or tension makes sense. The goal is to rescue an NPC princess, then cool. You know you'll need where they're held, who's guarding them, and how the players can find them. And then here is a pro tip. Once you've got your one big thing, write a player-facing version of it. Such as, tonight's session is about infiltrating a cult hideout. Or, today we're hunting down the monster that's been attacking the village. Stuff like that. Real quick, if you're watching this and you've already got a campaign running already, just pause this really quick and ask yourself this one question. What's the big thing I want my next session to be about? If you can't say it in one sentence, it's probably a bit too complicated for one session. Just trim it down a bit, make it simple. You can always add chaos at the table in the moment. Once you've got that locked in, your one big thing, then step 2 is way easier. Because now we can build 3 to 5 scenes that build towards that one goal. Alright, step 2. Build your session using a simple 3-scene structure. One of the biggest mistakes that new DMs can make is over-planning for a session. I've definitely done that. You don't need 12 encounters, 19 pages of lore, a token-length prologue. All you need is 3 scenes. The beginning, the middle, and the ending. Scene 1 could be the setup. This is where the party gets information, explores a new place, or meets someone important. It sets the stage and reminds players what they're working towards. For example, you arrive at the abandoned lighthouse. The storm is getting worse. What do you do? And then that brings us to the second scene, the challenge. This is where conflict happens. It could be a combat encounter, a puzzle, a moral decision, or even a tense role-play session. The only rule is there must be stakes. Something to lose, something to gain, or a decision that changes everything. For example, halfway up the spiral stairs, a void spawn tears out of the wall. Roll initiative. And then scene 3 is the resolution. This is where the scene wraps up and pushes the story forward. Maybe they find a clue, a reward, or face a twist that launches the next session. For example, at the top of the tower you find a shattered piece of the crystal, but it pulses with something alive. End session. Dun dun dun. 3 scenes give your session a satisfying arc without drowning you, the Dungeon Master, in prep. And if your players derail everything, which they probably will, let's be honest, you can still move these scenes around and still land the plane. So before you move to the next step in this video, just be sure to write down what your setup is, what your challenge is, and what your resolution is. Alright, now moving on to step 3, choose 3 major moments. Every great D&D session has structure. Not a script, not every detail plan, but story beats. Think of them like anchor points. No matter how chaotic your players are, these three things will almost always happen, and they give you direction when the session starts kind of going off the rails. So ask yourself, what are three things that must happen in this session for the story to move forward? Some example moment types that you can read right here. You could be a reveal, a trap or obstacle, a combat or confrontation of some kind, a meaningful NPC interaction, or a big choice that affects the future. For example, when I write my D&D sessions, one thing I will always write down is, okay, what is going to keep the story moving forward? It could be, again, a letter that they find that pushes them towards the next location, even though sometimes they don't go there anyway. But another example is, the party learns that the cult is already inside the ruins. And moment 2 could be they run into a wounded soldier who reveals the next location. Or the third moment could be a boss fight with corrupt guardians blocking the way forward. It's short, simple, and flexible. These become your guideposts. If players go exploring somewhere random, cool, but you always have direction when you need to pull them back toward the story. And if you are overwhelmed with oh my gosh, I don't know what I want these moments to be, decide the last moment first. Like what you want the big third moment to be, because that way everything that comes before it will occur naturally throughout the session. And even if the final moment is something as simple as they reach the city gates, they find the key to the vault, they meet the villain for the first time, having a destination means you can improvise the path. Your session isn't a movie script, it's a roadmap. Give your story 3 anchor points and let the players fill the space in between. Alright, then step 4 is just to prepare NPCs and dialogue sparks. NPCs are the heart of your session, whether they're allies, villains, or that random fisherman who suddenly becomes the fan favorite for some cursed reason. And when you are short on time, here's the secret. Don't write paragraphs about each NPC, write bullet points. You don't need a novel, you need these things. Their role, their vibe, and one line that they might say. So the party is meeting the shady merchant named Varlo, and instead of writing a full backstory, you write his role is he's the black market info broker. His vibe, he talks too fast, always looking over his shoulder. And his signature line, I don't know who told you that, but they're already dead. And boom, you're done with that NPC. That one sentence sets the tone, gives the player something memorable to latch onto. It gives you a performance anchor so you're never scrambling. And if the players wander or ask questions you didn't prepare for, just keep repeating their motive, which is another thing to jot down. For example, their goal or motive could be they want gold, they're worried about a dangerous rival, will sell information but not for free. Doesn't matter what the players ask you, just respond through that lens. NPCs become memorable not because of detail, but because of consistency and personality. You could have 10 pages written for a queen, but players will care more about the goblin bartender who calls everybody chief and pours ale with his foot. So spend no more than 3 minutes per important NPC, and for background characters, literally 30 seconds. Names, vibe, motive, and one line, you're done. Alright, and then the final step, step 5, you need to prep your opening scene. This is the very first thing your players will experience when the session starts, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. And no, this does not need to be complicated. Write the first 2 to 3 minutes of the session like a mini movie moment. Something clear, engaging, and something that immediately puts the players back into the world. You're basically answering one question. What do the players see, hear, and feel when the camera opens? An example script that you could use/explain. A cold wind cuts across the stone road as distant thunder rolls above the tree line. Lanterns flicker against the darkness, and somewhere in the distance, something screams. And boom, everyone is instantly starting to listen. Or if it's a lighter tone for your session, you could say, the tavern erupts in laughter as a dwarf sings off-key on top of the bar, slinging ale across the room like confetti. Outside, the rain drums against the windows, but inside, night feels alive. This first scene serves 2 purposes. Number 1, it pulls your players into the story instead of starting with awkward silence and dice shaking. Number 2, it buys you time. While players are reacting, role-playing, or asking questions, you could be reviewing notes and finalizing the next steps. If you're new to DMing, like me, I've been doing this my entire session, write this opening down word for word and just read it. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to improvise poetry on the fly, you just need a strong start. So yeah, think of step 5 as your cinematic opening shot. Give your players something to react to, something to ask questions about, something that makes them immediately say, oh hell yeah, let's go. And then, the session has already begun. And that's it. That's how you plan a D&D session in under 30 minutes. Remember, you don't need a 200-page outline or a perfect script. All you really need is a clear goal, a reason to care, a problem to solve, a map to anchor the players, and one unforgettable moment. Everything else, you make it up at the table. That's the magic of Dungeons & Dragons. If this helped, or if you're a new DM trying to figure things out, drop a comment below and tell me the fastest you've ever prepped a session, or your biggest prep disaster. I've had a few myself. If you want more videos like this, go down there, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so we get notified of every single time I upload, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays now, and be sure to hit the like button so I know you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Behind the Screen. See you next session.